I
Glad to
figured,
be here.
thank you so much.
All right.
So my name's Mimi, and I consider myself part of Kelly and Peter's family. They might not, but I do. So this is really just an enjoyable time for me to come and share this book with you before my second book comes out in September. And I have poems from that second book here that I'll also share. Gives me practice for September. So I'll start. This book is called Beneath the Gravel Weight of Stars. And if anybody would like one before they leave, I have them here, or you can get one from Kelly. So this book was written when I was doing work for about 8 years in primarily St. John's, but also in Northwest, with people living on the street. And as a poet, I recognized that I saw things quite differently from the masses in Portland. And I decided to put them all, what I saw in poetry, and try to show people that people are people. People are not a thing, they are not a homeless thing, something to not look at. Anyway, I wanted this to humanize folks on the street. So I start reading in this book by my dedication, because for me, it brings my friends into this space. When the wood is too wet to burn, I will feed you melons and the songs of birds. To all my brothers and sisters trying to survive on the streets in St. John's, Oregon, thank you for sharing your lives with me, your incredible courage, and your love. May you survive another night. I love you with all my heart. These poems are for you. The Crossing. Shadows cross the wired streets, the long dash of the horning day, the slow roll of the sidewalk suitcase, the step of the heavy cloud, deliberate the lift of the wet sneaker, the sod of a prayer. She walks hunting for cans or love to feed the bear. Last night, sun was turned off. The moon had fled. Today, the forecast is too cold to be desperate. Beneath this unsnow of sky, one foot follows the other. Regrettably, anywhere is the graveyard.
Can everybody hear from you?
Can I just say something? So a friend
Yes.
of mine who could not come tonight has been listening to your poems.
Oh.
And I wish I should have had my phone and I could read to you what she wrote. It's about listening to you, just your cadence and up and down and your gentle voice. I mean, she's just in love with your voice.
That's sweet.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just can't, she was more eloquent in how she explained it. But
Well-
as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of Daphne. It's like she just loves listening to you.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I owe my reading ability to Kelly. This is true. I come to Kelly with certain poems and I say to her, how do I read this? And she says, well, let me read it first to myself. I said, no, just read it out loud. And Kelly's readings help me to just read these. And she's been instrumental in helping me to just read poems and not,
So if we don't like it, then it's Kelly's fault.
it's Kelly.
That's right.
The words are my fault. The cadence could be Kelly's
You're
fault.
being too kind.
Yeah.
Kelly. It was a-
Yes, and by the way, I really welcome comments, questions, anything like that. So I really do believe in the salon style of existence.
I owe
So-
my reading to my first grade teacher.
Oh, yeah. I wrote this song in the Starbucks on 23rd in, I don't know if it's Pettygrove. The other side of the coffee shop window. His back sags against the crush of crescent moon. Across the shatter, beneath the gravel weight of stars, the fisted arms of God pleat to his back, shoving him forward into the sidewalk cracks. Even the wheels of his cart are sullen, worn, bent from the handling and the crash of cosmic debris. The bulldoze of shade across the seep, the concrete line, the drunken dodge of burning snowballs, the head limp, the turnaways. Ursid's whisper in the door jamb. Over on 12th and Johnson, Perseid hovels at the tracks. Lyrids stoke a paper fire. Is it a star-gown dance or the survival of lambs roasting round the spit where wrinkles and jowls grow from no surprises? The rise, the fall, shallow waters or high tide, his feet are always wet. So I'll share a secret that's not a secret anymore because it's going to be on film and probably put out. I do guerrilla art with my poems. I put them up anywhere with no permission, and I get them printed on like 6-foot long pieces of paper. And I put this one right outside the window of Starbucks, right where he walked by on the bus stop. And it was really wild to sit there and watch people come by and read this poem or walk by the poem, which is what people tend to do when people are homeless anyway. So, yeah, so it always reminds me of that.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what gave rise to that poem?
Yes, the Ursids and the Lyrids and Perseid are all meteor showers. And I love meteor showers. And around this time in the winter, there were meteor showers. And so I used those as people huddled in the corners, in the shadows of Northwest, and talked about that connection between the heaviness of stars and the gravity for a homeless person. Everything pushes you down. And watching him push this cart while gravity pushed him down was almost too much to bear. Number 19, Earth on Dry Ink. Waking tangled in the cling-wrap morning sky, a sedentary rooster crows. A cold dog barks. Squirrel hustles her nuts. Buses croon on city streets. The pothole begs. A tugboat fights a Chinese barge. Crows dock on wires. Winter's emptiness flocks. Cottonwoods expose the nest. Worms earth themselves. The spate of day. That was good timing. That was great. That was so good. So the next poem from this book is called No House
That was
Row.
the end?
Yes, yes. Dear God, he says.
Practice.
Sorry.
He grew up in Philadelphia, and we had row houses in Philadelphia. And I grew up in a row house for my first 8 years. And when I walked the path of, in St. John's, of the homeless camp, the largest homeless camp, it made me remember row houses up my street, except they were tents. And I realized this was No House Row. So this is called No House Row.
So Mimi actually takes care of the homeless, was like medical type things too. And so how many years you did it? Did you do it for like?
8 or 10, I don't know.
And then she's moved recently to southern Oregon, but she used to, she became friends with all the kind of encampments in St. John's area, north. I thought it was northeast, not
It's
northwest.
north, yeah. And
North,
Peter
okay.
became their doctor by phone. which was
That was-
really
that's
a
the best way to
blessing.
do it.
No house row. The oatmeal stain of 6 a.m. on the maggot's grip of winter's fist. The dung heap canvas rustles on the hang of clothesline stench. Grease the replay of a lost good day. Head torque into bending lonesome. Rusting spine of pleating shade covers the heavy curl of the unrecognizable suit and the hide of swollen fingers. This is No House Row, where taut rinds sorrow and dreams decompose like weeds lamenting, where grasses die tucked in the nestle of sleeting rain. The limp dick honesty of a gray sky off kilters your mask. Hungry is the sag. The heart is yesterday's buttered squash and gristle, tendered in the slow cook of hours. This next one is called North Fessenden, and I live in St. John's near North Fessenden, and I saw someone on the street who was waiting for a bus, and I wrote this about him. He wears the worn kilter and the right hand lean of the weight of a man. Torso bends heavy on his cane, waiting for a bus. He turns a page in the cracks of the sidewalk. Looks like Burroughs, but I call him St. John. The necktie of hustle smears the greasy air. Potholes breed poets in these parts, stammering like starlings, and he is syntax framed. This is the garden. He is wild chard. City workers paint the lines. Kicked up stones crack the windshields of the parishioners of the Church of Daylight Savings, where sun seeps into cracks and the doors are always locked.
Can I ask you a question about your, I mean, this may not be the right time, but I'm just curious because I'm a teacher here, and so kids are good at doing poetry because they don't have to write a lot in their heads, you know what I mean?
Make it
So I'm
short,
just
you mean.
curious, yeah, but you get powerful, you get a lot in it, but, so it's not so intimidating. But do you have like a way that you, I can't think of the words today. How do you do your poem? How do you, there's a word I can't think of the word.
How does it manifest, or?
Something like that. Like, do you have a?
So some of these poems are called like number 19. Let's see, this one was number 19, Earth on Dry Ink. So the way that I write on all of these is I look out and it's like I'm painting.
Okay.
That's how it is
That's
for
what I
me.
need. That's what I need. Okay.
I am just painting the canvas.
Okay, that's a good.
So a lot of people don't do that. It's sort of in their head, and they have this ability to go there and just draw from that. And I often am looking at the thing and painting it on this canvas.
I like the way you said that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm. Noon in the park. So Noon in the park. I, in my guerrilla tactics with people living on the street, I am an anarchist. We went to put together a safety net for folks living in St. John's. This was in 2018. And we wanted to build a village for them. It was unsanctioned. The sanctions weren't working anyway. There was no permission from anybody to help anybody on the street, like zero. So let's do it. Let's do it together. So we asked around who wants to take part in this. And there were a lot of people. Well, I want to take part in this. Well, you got to vote. You know, you got to come up with rules. This is how we're going to do this. And we made this happen. And in the middle of the night, we brought in 12 brand new tents on platforms, and we set them up in an area that had no housing near it, and created a safety net for folks. In the process of doing this, we were taking a vote one day, and my friend was coming. I was like, you got to come to the meeting. You have to vote. And he said, I'll be there in a minute. And I knew that a minute meant he was going to go and he was going to get high. And I was like, oh man, I don't think he's going to make the meeting. And he made the meeting. And he came back. He was very high. And this is this poem. Noon in the park. He dragged in his hand a three-legged chair, visible only to him. It was made of oak, or was it maple? The faded yellow paint was chipping, and one leg had fallen off. He found it this way on the path. Slowly, like a tattered paper crane opening, he bent the tall sky beneath his thin body to sit on the invisible chair. He wobbled for balance. Crows spread out beside him to hold on for the steady. The squirrels came by to see the scene. The man on the invisible, rickety chair stood up, pushed the chair over, and yelled to all that all he wants is to have a shower. He paused. And to clean my balls. He stood on one foot, his other leg shaking like a crooked cane at the wind and at the squirrels and at the sky. But then he bowed, a deep, quiet bow, humbling himself to the wet, muddy ground, and sat down once more on his chair made of air. This poem is called Afflicted, and this is about the mental health system. Afflicted. She holds her breath as if she were holding God. When she could no longer stand, when her eyes bulged like a blowfish on a hook, she exhaled, and God let go of her. Sometimes she waited for angels to appear in the silence, not knowing that the silence was an angel appearing. The doctor said she was afflicted because she could not shut her eyes. She dreamed she never slept, which wasn't a dream. She was the colors of all things, and all things were she. In the early morning hour, she would lie on the ground, feeling the moon tied tightly to her belly. She was its rock, tied to a tree. When the ground swayed, she laughed on her swing. As the moon exhaled, she tucked in the season's corners. She collected leaves and sometimes dust. She walked the shimmering, finless trail of scales, the tiptoe of jangled light. She rubbed her skin in luminescent sand to feel whole, dipping her tilt into the lost lake, uncertain of the footings. She knew the notes of wind. Yesterday, she met a young man who was high on living. He told her, there is beauty. She thought he was a spirit. A truck blew its horn, startling her back into the stark. She inhaled. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah? Day 50. Somebody told me on day 50, she's been sober for 50 days and, you know. Day 50. She tucks her slink beneath the rickety socket inside these bones of horns, birds. She crawls into dreams past the man who stole the fallen star for a $20 bag. It's a short one. Yeah.
Get to the point.
Yeah. So I'll just read, one more from here and read some of the others from the new book. This is number 29, Opaque Pastel on Crepe Paper. Her hustle beneath headphones and a Johnny Deuce, no rain, no wet, the bone shiv of winter waits in the cracked lips of clouds. Meantime, 13 cans is a free lunch. No dog is dogging today. Lombard is the slot machine. So thanks for listening to poems from this book.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
it's great.
I feel like you took us there.
Yeah.
Are your new poems about homeless people too? Or?
No, my third book is. So the second book is this one, or parts of, this is parts of it. And the third book that will be out in October is a compilation that's edited by myself and my friend in the UK, co-written, well, co-poeted by people living, poets on the street and poets who are poet laureates. So this coming together from sea to sea, land to land, and poets to poets, housed and unhoused.
Can I ask you also?
Yeah.
Were any of the homeless people that you were working with, did they express any interest in writing their own poems?
They did, and we have tried to put a poetry group together, but because of the chaos, it was too difficult to do that.
Yeah.
And now I'm mostly not in Portland, so it's too difficult for my time to put that together. So for the third book, I was working with street poets from Street Roots magazine, newspaper.
Sure.
So it was a lot easier to locate people who were already writing and who wanted to be a part of that. So we met at Street Roots in the office.
Where do you live in Southern Oregon now?
It's southeastern Oregon, near Steens Mountain.
Oh,
Yeah.
Near Fields.
Yeah,
the best,
near
the
Fields.
best milkshakes in the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah.
the best milkshakes.
Yeah. So this book was written during the first 2.5 years of COVID. And it starts when the shutdown began. March 2020. We were lovers once, and then the end of the world happened.
That's it?
That's the book.
That's the whole book. Dusk. Well, this first part is about loss. Dusk. Outside my window, the rain drops hard, clacks the earth like worry beads. Priestly trees sway like 1,000 rabbis at the wall. Nothing wails except the wind. Prayers fold and tuck into origami prisms, float like kites toward the sky. I wonder who is left to do the bidding, to mind the castle when there is no one left. What I recognize when I read these out loud to people at readings is that we forget. We have already forgotten
Yeah, I agree,
how
I agree.
intense
So
it
I
felt
agree.
in March.
I agree.
Yeah. And I remember, I'm feeling this, the same thing. Each time I read these, it just brings it all back. Yeah.
Well, I also know that I can't just say this for every poem because that would be repetitive, but I really like that last poem.
Thank you. Thank you. I cannot sleep. Night presses its weight onto morning like a well-spent lover. Colors petal the stem of sky. When you wake, there is no way to dream me into water lapping at your feet. Old roots finger the shoreline of the lake, yearning for the soft body of her wet sands. Beneath the sagging breast of a cypress tree, a bird sings into the silence, peeling back the husk of darkness for one more day. Adrift. How quickly the tide pushes us farther and farther from any shore. Inside, it is quiet. Everything is small. The fire in the wood stove, the night mouse, the moon. Somewhere there is a sun and love. I sit on this couch, wondering if clouds make sound as they pass through each other, like the swish of fish deep in the sea. My hands look old, veins more transparent under thinning skin. I am tired, but no more linear. I am losing weight under this weight. It is hard to be hungry anymore, to hunger through the scarcity of erased lines. Tomorrow is a made-up word. The walk. What is hope in a plague? To live, to die, to skirt the ragged crags of vacancy and rusted tin can fires. I walk the miles through hail and sleet, in sun with hands unclasped and eyes fixed to the unmarked trail. I mean, didn't you all feel that way? You know, like,
Captured
what
well.
is this? How do we do
Where are we
this?
going?
Yeah. So part 2 in the book is the demise of humanity under the president whom we shall not name.
Okay.
And this was during COVID. 1,000 grains of sand. America, the dominatrix, empire of 1,000 grains of sand, whose masters ink in the high heels of war whores, who circle jerk at the feasts of landlords while spilling slop bucket prayers to the poor. America, how necrotic your soul. Your poets cringe in the wake of your obscenities. Your rotted stench of henchmen, pillagers of lands once verdant and alive. Your orchards of poverty grow seeds of death. America the illiterate, you were never ready to leave home.
I can get behind that one.
This one is called
That is a good one. Thank you. Yeah.
Poverty.
Really good.
Thank you.
Really
Poverty.
good. But that one just kind of got me.
Okay, so that one, just as a reminder to you, that was 1,000 grains of sand. Poverty. Poverty sits in a chair wearing a pair of blue shorts, shoelaces untied, hungry, waiting for no one in particular and nothing at all. Wears glasses missing a lens, seeing clearly the crack in the view. In America the Beautiful, the water is dirty, man. You know what I mean. A stench not even a mother could pretend to love. Like swill in the swale of a beached, bloated whale. A cistern of stink. Like the sow of a politician let loose in a sty of flies. Yeah, the water's dirty, all right. Too dark to see reflection in the old gully, where love, like bark peeled from its tree, was abandoned in a sandbox near the liquor store dumpster.
There's a lot of love there.
What's that?
There's a lot of love there.
This is a haiku. Beneath the thickets, the clutter of war, we are drowning in our dumplings. This is called Joy. Again, part of part 2. Part 2 is a real hitter, huh? Joy. He's feral in all the hours and twisted seconds. Raw wood, the color of your rust-stained drain. You want joy? He's not your guy, man. The incessant scratch from cantankerous mouths. You want joy? I mean real joy? Good luck. Walk in that horizon line and watch out for the crack somewhere left of center. Beyond the high-heeled sentiment of bourgeois ambition, his words belong etched into dirt beneath a rock. You want to know joy? Joy is a low-cut blouse, lapping up the bitter scent of shadows, folding into the sagging cleavage of a calving iceberg. Joy, unprotected from the unprotected, the crisscrosser of streets, an American failure. This last poem in part 2, well, it's not the last poem in part 2, but for here, this is called Martyrs. And this was written for all of our friends who took part in Black Lives Matter, and one in particular who was killed, and to those who were with her who were injured.
This is in Portland too, right?
Yes. Martyrs. In the early morning hours, when the sun clings morning to her skirts, rise, O yesterday's ghosts, whose memories sequin the path in shimmering light so the rest of us might see. Then we get to part 3, which are poems from the desert. This is, part 3 is sort of the reckoning, the awakening, the breath is returning. Wilderness. They say nothing is out here. That here is in the middle of nowhere. But here, exactly here, you find your where on earth, your who you are, your you whole here. Time is the existence of a sun and a lizard who tells you that living is just luck.
That poem for you,
I like that.
This poem, Spring on Steens Mountain, I just read in a landscape with Hunter Nowak, who performed his classical piano in the desert 20 miles from our place. And this was at the base of Steens Mountain, so it was quite a beautiful experience for me. Spring on Steens Mountain. Oh, the sparse trees, the split trees, the half trees and the burrowed trees, the one-armed trees and the old crag trees. Oh, the lone tree. In the afterbirth of winter, we rejoice at last and open the windows wide to breathe a deeper breath of sky. Winter's paper grasses turn to fertile stalks of green. Snow still clings to mountain crags and peaks. The songs of coyotes fold fields to clouds, and on the open slope of thighs, spring rides in unbridled. Velvet auburn robes swathe the newborn fawns. Wildflowers and balsa root shake their blossoms loose to remind us what it is to earth ourselves in such tambourine divinity. Red-winged blackbirds sweep the tongue of sagebrush fields. Rabbit peeks from his namesake brush. We drink the running waters in pronghorn country. Now, this next poem is for Kelly. Dan, who is on the video camera, and I and others were building shelters for folks on the street in St. John's in this driveway with Kelly and Peter's permission. And one day it was raining and we were inside the shelter fixing it, doing something. And in walks Kelly in her pink pajamas, coffee, and she said, "I want to read you this." And she stood up and read this poem. Well, read a Ferlinghetti poem. And this is about her reading of this Ferlinghetti poem. Ferlinghetti's Interruption for Kelly Lou just before the lockdown of the world. She brought us coffee in the rain, and later, with another round in pink pajamas and slip-on slippers and a book, she began to read Ferlinghetti's I Am Waiting. We turned down the volume of the live stream on death and dying at the end of the world in order to hear, between the silence, the words for anarchy and rebirth of wonder. I shifted my position on the ground to witness this pink bird in flight, arms waving with each line inside this heavenly shelter. her voice trumpeting to the heavens louder with each line. I am waiting for the lost music to sound again. And I am waiting for a way to be devised to destroy all nationalisms without killing anybody. I could hear the gentle spatter of spring rain on the driveway and the words, unpremeditated art, making all things clear. And then my tears, like petals, fell for all the fleeing lovers, whom I would embrace, indelible, perpetually, and forever. This poem is called Blue Wilderness. This is written down in the desert. Blue Wilderness. Like the last person alive, she yearns for the last peony in a drunken field of wildflowers, where clouds graze on raven-scented air, to watch how darkness colludes with light, assembling the appendage of dawn. But morning patina billows blue, desert blue, lonesome blue, shadows silhouette, mountainsides root. Unweathered rock, late autumn heaves, and she tumbles across the stutter. Exhausted grasses wet from a moonless rain fold toward winter's coming, where only truths grow acres long. And this very last poem, which is not in the book, it'll be in my next one, is also for Kelly. A Blue Jay Morning.
Dear God.
For
He
Ke-
said, "Dear God."
for Ke-
Well, she tried to make friends with the crows.
well, this is this, yes. A Blue
Now
Jay
she's got hoo-hoo.
hoo-ha.
Hoo-ha.
A Blue Jay Morning for Kelly Lou O'Hanley. We sit on the porch discussing the facts of crows. We are invaded by blue jays. Fucking blue jays. The coyote of birds. The trickster, the jester, the egg-stealing quester. To you, raven and crow, I will always feed my dreams. And to your kiss, I will always say, caw, caw. Thank you all for listening.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming. So I will take questions if anybody has any.
So was she the Blue Jay?
She is now. The
It's a big move from Portland to Field.
Yeah, what occasioned that?
So I wanted to find a cabin to write in to get away from here. So I looked all in the east, just straight out east, and also eastern Washington. And there are no, Claudia, don't eat those. They'll sting your tongue. Come here. And there were no cabins. They don't exist anymore. I called realtors and I said, where are the cabins? And so they said they don't exist. They have fallen into the earth. So my partner went online and the first thing that came up was this piece of land. And she said, well, it's not a cabin, but, and we looked at it and fell in love with it. I called the realtor and said, we want to come down. And Nancy, who was the realtor, said, seriously? And so we went down.
It really is in the boonies. I mean,
I know where Fields is.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's in the boonies.
It's 2 hours from anywhere.
What's
So-
the closest thing? Or closest town?
2 hours away, Burns. 2 hours away, Winnemucca.
Okay.
2.5 hours away, something in Idaho.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What
There's
is,
like 6 people in Fields and they have the best milkshakes in the world though.
Yes.
So we went down.
I've been,
Yeah.
I go birding down there.
Oh.
It's
And
spectacular.
Fields
It's
is-
so beautiful. You have to go.
Wow.
It's
and
spectacular.
The
The
steams
steams are
and
incredible.
the Alvord Desert. I mean,
Been
it's,
there.
it's
Oh, yeah.
fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to turn our space into a writing and arts something.
Yeah.
And I think that Hunter Nowak's mother is going to help us with that once winter comes and they're off the tour. Yeah.
what's your source of heating?
Wood.
Would, yeah.
Oh, well, we did buy. Hey. We bought for the shop and the apartment. There's a shop, and we just stuck an apartment on that. We bought a splits. What are they called? Mini splits. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good grief. Yeah, we
Yeah.
know. There's a hummingbird.
But that's not making that noise.
No, that's the
J.
J. That's the J.
Oh,
Jay,
the
but there's
J.
a hummingbird
Yes.
like harassing the
Hummingbird,
scrub jay.
Oh, you know what? My money's on the hummingbird. They are ferocious. They're wonderful. I have to, do you have running water?
We will have running water. We have a well that isn't quite connected to the house yet. That's
Yeah.
coming in a short time. And we have warm springs on our property.
Oh, nice.
And we have springs, like clear springs that come up. So in a sense, we have running water. We use the clear spring water and we bring that in the house and put it through a Berkey and a filter and
Nice.
use that. But the warm springs water right now is what we bathe in. Yeah, yeah.
And is it warm enough to bathe in the winter?
It is in the wintertime. Yeah, it depends. It's a constant 86.5. So it just depends on your, yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're
You got
very,
a few other hot springs around.
yeah, we're
too.
very close to hot springs all over the place. Yeah. So it's,
Interesting.
and Ursula Le Guin wrote a book of poetry called Out Here. I think it's called Out Here. And she created this book with a photographer who was already going down to this area, and he brought her down, and she fell in love with it, and she stayed at a ranch that's on Steens Mountain for years. Not at one time. She would go down and be there and write poetry, and it was as if reading that book on our land, as if she was right where our land is. Yeah, it's
Because it's so,
something.
like, the same.
It's the same. Yeah, yeah. We are basically on Steens Mountain.
Who are
Well,
some of
haven't
your-
you been in contact with some of the native people that have?
Yeah, we've been in contact with the Paiute Burns Paiute tribe, who and the cultural center. So Diane has been coming down to figure out a way to work with us and bring the kids down from Burns to be able to be on the land. So she's been super busy fighting the lithium mine in Nevada. So her time is spent in court right now fighting that. So it's, yeah. So at some point we'll have the kids down on the land, and she'd like to teach down there.
Who are some of your favorite poets?
Well, I learned to write poetry in first grade by my teacher,
Maybe we had the same teacher.
and Mrs. Seltzer in Philadelphia and Elkins Park. And she turned us on to Whitman and
nice.
Dickinson and Frost and, boy, some others. And
What grade?
first grade, and we had to pick poems that we loved, and I loved so many of them, and we had to copy them for writing
Oh, that's
into
wonderful.
our
That's wonderful.
homemade
That's wonderful.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was my first experience with poetry, and I never left Whitman. He has been like, I feel like I've been walking with him a long time. So a lot of the beat writers, Galway Canal, just I have so many. There's a living writer in New York, George Wallace. He's become a close friend, and he's an incredible writer. So yeah, there's just many. You know.
Do you only write poetry, or do you
Yes.
write essays?
No, I used to write songs, and yeah.
She's an awesome musician. Let's
I-
go Miriam's well.
I used to write lyrics and sing, and I had a band, and I left that, and it was the best decision ever. And my poetry came back, so that was a wonderful thing to just have that return. It was a surprise too, going from
You
song
didn't
lyrics.
seek it, it found
I
you.
didn't seek it. No, I was writing before that, writing
Minding your own
poetry,
business.
minding my own business, writing songs, trying to be a rock star. And now there's none of that, and it's so freeing, and it's free.
Yeah. Do you know
Yeah.
a woman named Dana Lynn Lewis?
No.
Gather Make Shelter. It's the homeless connection. She does she's a visual artist and she works with homeless people. She gets potters to throw pots and then she pays the homeless to decorate them.
Oh, cool. Wow.
And
That's neat.
yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
I thought you might have run into her.
No, but the third book that's coming out
Yeah.
that is co-written
Yeah.
with folks on the street, that book, the whole idea for that book came from Kim Stafford and our poet laureate. And he said to me, you should write a little book like I do, just these little books, you know? He goes, write one for folks on the street. I said, well, I have this one.
Yeah.
He said, no, write an uplifting one
Yeah.
for folks on the street.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I called Dan because Dan and I had done so much work on the street together. And I said, Dan, how can I pretend to write something uplifting for people on the street? It's just fake. It just feels fake. I don't know how to do that because they're suffering 24/7. And Dan said, I don't know how you're going to do it. You know, he's like, if anyone can, you'll figure it out. But like, good luck. And we talked about this whole concept of how can someone who is not living on the street write something uplifting for somebody who is living on the street? How do we bridge that in a way that is honest and real? And I didn't know. And for 2 weeks, I just sat with it. Had no idea how I was going to do it. And I was like, I don't know. And then one night, it came to me that I have to do this. Well, a poem came to me, a way to say something honestly. And it was a poem about a woman saying that, because this happened, that sometimes, this isn't the poem, but sometimes I like being in my tent when it's raining because the rain calms me. It was like this. So anyway, I was like, oh, and I started to work with this idea of how to get to something on an honest level. Then I reached out for folks on the street and Street Roots to get connected because I love the poetry section in Street Roots magazine. It's great, newspaper. So then it all started to make sense. And got in touch with poet laureates and beat poets and things like that, and we have this book now that is just about complete. We're waiting for 2 poems, one from someone on the street in the UK and an artist and poet from the UK. So yeah, so October for that. Oh yeah, so anyway, the reason I was saying that was our idea was we put these in bookstores, you buy one and you get one. And you give that other one to somebody on the street. So we would hook this arrangement up with a bookstore. You know, you're going to order these books, and they have to agree to it, you know. So you buy a book, you get a book to give to somebody on the street. And it's this uplifting little thing. And Kim said, go do it. And I was like, he's a poet laureate. Okay, I'm going to figure this out. So that's how that book came about.
I know this is,
If somebody's walking by the house.
Yeah.
Jackie's saying, this is
Yeah.
my house.
Yeah.
Yep,
Go, Jackie O.
that's how she is.
well, I know this isn't exactly why you're here, but since you've worked with the homeless for so long and then you've had written about it in poetry and through that lens, where do you see the hope?
Where's the hope?
Hope is a 4-letter word.
The first of all, I only get my information for what's working from people on the street.
Yeah.
Because anybody else, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not real. So what I've heard from everybody in St. John's is that they love the new village for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
They're really happy that they have a pod.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that aren't working yet with the managers, but from my friends on the street, they said, we think this is going to work out. We're going to figure this out together. I completely disliked, what are they, the group from California that made the millions on this one.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah. So my cousin is getting his PhD in harm reduction in LA. And I called him about them, Urban Alchemy. I said, what's the story? He said, it's two-sided. He said they've done some good things and they've done horrible things and they're being sued for those horrible things. And so he said, I don't condone what they do. And that's just how that is. They're like the newest member of the gravy train. But again, my concern is always with just the people, and they're liking it, and they feel protected by having a roof and a lock, you know? So that's a start for cities to do that. The hardest part is having a community, first of all, agree, but like in this case, Urban Alchemy, agree to not be egregious. Like, you don't put the bathrooms right underneath somebody's house, right under his kitchen window. You don't do that because you're going to create enemies. It's not going to work for the community, and it's a false pretense of we're doing something good because you've just ruined his life, you know? And so if governments, local governments could figure this out and stop dissing homeowners, or anybody living in a house, you know, so that these communities of pods can get put in, then we have a starting place. Because then you have somebody who has an address who you can find if you actually had social services that worked to go to those people to say, we're going to get you this, 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 and this. Oh, you don't have a license? Let's go. I got a car. Let's go get it. Or the whole thing, you know. You can't get employment without a license. So the whole thing begins with ID, you know. So if they could get these things straight, and we've been telling them for years at City Council, like we've been there telling them for years how to do this, then we can make progress. I have helped house 7 people with the help of Northwest Pilot Project. The people over 55, they are amazing. And absolutely the only group that actually comes through and does this. And the way they do it is they have to be able to locate the person. I know where the person is. They can use my phone. We set up the appointments, and it takes a whole lot. It's one person at a time. But they work. So this is doable. It's the fact that our city continues to do things that harm people rather than doing things that help people. You know, and if they just switch that and said what's working and ask the people on the street what's working, then we would be on track for housing people and getting them the mental services that they need. Yeah, the whole thing.
If you don't have an address, you can't get drugs for the mentally ill. You can't get drugs for pain. I mean, it's just insulin. It's really sad.
Yeah. So that's how to fix it. And that's
You don't have safety either.
That's right. So it's a real way to fix this, and
You feel like they're listening now?
no, not at all. The sweeps thing that they're doing is just because folks who have lots of money and control the Portland Business Alliance have put this pressure on Wheeler to do these sweeps, which are absolutely illegal according to the Ninth Circuit. You cannot do that. Oh yeah, it's in court right now again. And the appeals court in Oregon, this is in Klamath, Dan? Is it Klamath or somewhere around there? The OJC won that. Where is it? Grants Pass, yeah. Grants Pass won. We were trying to get the same lawyers to do a case for us in St. John's, but they felt that the Grants Pass was more winnable. And they used the Ninth Circuit ruling, and it went through with Oregon as well. You can't sweep in Grants Pass unless you have enough places in shelters to put everybody. And we don't have that. So Ted's whole thing about we're just going to sweep you every single moment we see you it's actually deadly.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work.
But they're
You're
gonna
just
try
not
to
going to.
take it to the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
and with 6-3,
Right. Right. There's no way that that's going to. Yeah. So.
Yeah, literally, I'm by the prison, and they've had like 6 sweeps in like the last 4 months,
Yep.
And literally within a week, they're back,
They're all
you know what I
back.
mean?
Yeah.
Well,
This
So
is-
the whole thing is, yeah, for a day it's clean, but it really is bizarre how
Yeah.
the sweeps really are just ineffective.
I saw something interesting on 33rd, which is it looked like there were trash cans being provided.
I did hear
for
that
the
they were
first
doing that.
time
Mhm.
ever.
Yeah.
All of the RVs and
Yeah, but it's still just
I
mind-boggling.
mean,
Yeah.
Anyway, that may be
Yeah.
true and it may be improvement, but
I
it's
thought
just.
that was
but
a
it's-
change
yeah,
anyway, yeah.
Well, we
probably
needed some
is.
good flavellas.
What?
Good what?
What is that?
Flavellas.
What is clavella?
Flavella.
Like in Rio.
A dance?
Flavellas is
Oh,
not
flavellas are
No,
the
those are the
slums.
slums,
The
yeah.
slums,
So what Dan and I were doing was we were creating these tarpies that a native man in Washington created at Standing Rock, and they were a method to create shelter for people, and we just made that happen and put people in them, and it worked for a time. It worked for a long time. It was over a year, or more. But it was the idea that shelter is the answer for starting. And so the more people we can get into these pods everywhere on any piece of ground that can have them, that's necessary. That's the thing that will appease everybody as well. It's going to help people on the street, appease people because they're not going to see as many people on the street. And people will have a place to go back to and put their things.
Right, and I do understand the sweeps, but I understand how horrendous that is if you have nowhere to go. I mean,
It's-
so you can't have the one without the other.
Yeah.
But of course, the businesses are hurting. Nobody wants to go downtown. I mean, it is, and I don't understand why. And again, I've been so out of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
Mhm.
what is taking them so long with building more of these?
The incompetence of members of the city council. Ted Wheeler is probably the most incompetent mayor that I've ever seen in Portland.
Well, he's been over his head
And
for a long time.
yes, he has. He came in over his head.
Yeah.
So that's why we gave him all the answers. This is what, on the first day, we dropped a packet off and said, this is what you need to do. And if you do this, you're going to start helping the situation and at least giving everybody a break to get going on this. And he just wouldn't do it. Then we have Rene Gonzalez, and he's a nightmare. And he won't do anything in the right way either. So the other one, who's the one who started with the villages? The one who looks like Ted.
Oh, Dan Wright.
Yeah. So he wanted to do these pods, and he couldn't get anyone to agree with it. And then Wheeler said, we're going to put 500 people. I mean, this is what the plan was. We're going to put 500 people in a camp. No, you're not. No one's going to let you do that, So they kept jumping from one thing to another because they don't know what they're doing, and they wouldn't have anyone come in, any of us, there's many of us who know what we're talking about, and to come in to help guide that.
Yeah, you just have to ask.
Yeah, and they don't.
That's
They're in their
it's-
bubble.
It's so easy to just say, what would you like? What could we do?
So if Urban Alchemy or or whoever is going to be this, then get the land and do the thing and get the pods up so that people can be in there. Because if you ask people on the streets if they'd want to be in a pod, the answer is yes. If you ask them if they want to be in a shelter, the answer is absolutely not.
Right.
None of us would want to be in a shelter. We would never agree to that, and neither will they. But a pod, yes. So,
And there have been cities where they are doing some successful things. And why not follow those?
yeah. So a friend of mine on the street in St. John's got a pod, and it's Natasha. She got one in St. John's now, so she's with, yeah. She's got clothes, she has a shower, she's got employment.
Wow, wow.
It's quick. And this is the thing that people don't understand. They hang on to these tropes of, people don't want to do anything for themselves. And sure, there's some people like that, and there's a ton of people living in houses who don't want to do anything either, So, of course there's people like that. But there's a lot of people who want to work and want money. And we can't say, oh, well, you want money for your drugs. we have pharmaceutical drugs in every single house here, you know, from, you know, whatever, all your pain pills and your sleep pills and your everything pills, and yet we judge everybody else, you know. But if they have safety and clothing
have
and
what?
bathrooms, safety, clothing, bathrooms, showers, and people coming around to help you, you know,
And to help people get off fentanyl, that's a little
That's-
different than
that's
some
a
of the
whole-
other drugs we're talking about.
it is different, but it's the same concept. And the concept is what I'm talking about is our disdain for drug addicts. And I'm saying that my mother's a drug addict on pharmaceutical drugs. You'd never know. You know, her friends are all drug addicts. You'd never know. You'd never know, because it's not fentanyl. These are prescribed things, sleep medicine, you know, anxiety medicine. And I'm not dissing that. I'm just saying that we have to stop dissing people on the street and saying, look, we need housing so that we can move forward with this. And then somebody can say, oh, God, I'm in housing. Now maybe I want to get clean.
Maybe I don't have to self-medicate for my horrible life.
Yeah.
And maybe we could actually get a night's sleep. What
Yeah.
I've read is so many people out there, have you ever not been sleeping for 2 nights?
Yeah.
Oh, I have.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, it's,
And the fentanyl gangs are out there.
yeah.
And they have guns and they use them at night. They just shoot them. This is common. And it's crazy.
Shoots
It's
whom?
the
addicts?
gangs, the
They shoot each
fentanyl,
addicts?
they don't shoot each other for the most part. They shoot into the air, scaring everybody. It's scare tactics, and
Really?
they do it everywhere. And all you have to do is talk to somebody on the street, downtown, in St. John's, anywhere.
I think I
Anywhere.
These are not the addicts.
These are the drug dealers.
The drug dealers. So
And so
they're,
they're shooting to scare people?
Oh, yeah. They just,
don't they want clients?
Yeah, what's the profit
Yeah.
margin in them doing that?
Power.
all I know is it's power. It's a whole power thing, you know. And they get threatened. So, and you have to make a dime on the street, you have to sell a dime on the street because you have nothing else to sell to make money. Yeah, you've got cans, but that's probably going to go to your cigarettes. And so everybody's a low class, low whatever, low level dealer. Yeah. Stay here. Hey.
Woo-woo!
And that would
The
stop
Mary
if we could get people into housing. And that's why we say housing first. And it can be a pod. People are okay with that. And I'm okay with that if people are okay with that,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So that's what we need. And we need them all over the place.
There's beer in the
Yeah.
refrigerator too.
There's this, people say to me, well, you don't have a village next to you. I'm like, go build it. There's a field right next to our house. Go put a pod there, you know? Why isn't there one there? So this is what has to happen, you know?
We probably get a lot of blowback from the neighbors.
Yeah, I'm sure, with some, you know. But then you find out, oh, wait, this is much better than having a tent in front of my front yard and somebody
street after street,
defecating,
like
you
82nd,
know.
yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what people are worried about. That, you know,
But if you have a pod,
where you
there's
have some-
bathrooms.
yeah.
Nobody wants to,
No,
you know, shit on the street.
no.
No one does. Mentally ill people, severely mentally ill people, don't even know they're doing it, so they don't count.
Right.
They just don't count in that, you know? They have serious, serious mental illness. So anyway, that's how we all feel, that this is the way to do that. And they have 2. There's the one in St. John's and the one in Multnomah Village. And yet the city council still won't deal with the neighborhood. It's not the neighborhood association, it's the neighborhood something that is supposed to be dealing with the office who's in charge of the village. And they won't talk to the people in houses. So
Wait, I'm not understanding what you
there's
just
a
said.
group that is the oversight group, and those are neighbors in houses. And they have an oversight group, and they are supposed to be in touch with the office in City Hall,
Okay.
whoever's job that is, Dan Ryan, whoever it is, to communicate to have them communicate, to hear what's needed and what's working and what's not. The city has refused to communicate with these oversight groups.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's something that's not working in that village, it's the job of that oversight group to go to the city. And if the city is refusing to talk to them, this is, it's dysfunctional.
It's their dereliction of duty,
It is.
really.
And there's no need for it because the people in the oversight group want to try to make this work. So you have a group that actually wants to try. They're not saying, take this away. They're saying, hey, we still have these problems. And how do we fix them?
Is the problem really about high rents? when it comes to that? I mean, you're talking about solving a problem that's just kind of, I don't wanna say it's
Weirdly
superficial,
enough,
in
but
a way immediate, and getting people off the streets and putting them someplace is not going to solve the systemic problem of why they're there in the first place. So, do they have any far-reaching ideas about how to solve the, not homelessness,
The reason
poverty
for it,
problem.
yeah, the poverty problem. The poverty problem is a rent problem.
well,
In big part, it's a rent problem.
that's part of the capitalism.
It's wage problem.
Yeah,
It's a wait. Well, that's the whole thing.
it's a concentrated wealth at the
Well, we're
top.
gonna be
Yeah.
talking about this for the next 20 years.
Exactly,
So you don't talk
exactly.
about how
Yes.
the systemic problem is
Yes.
Here, come join.
If your rent goes up and your job money isn't going up, your wage isn't going up, you can't pay it. And then all of a sudden, you're behind in your bills.
Yeah, but they knew this
Plot.
was coming for a long time and they didn't build, and that's the same thing that happened in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on, you gotta
Mhm.
start building.
And the other thing is, like in San Francisco and here as well, we have people who need to be in medical care immediately.
Right.
And not like by, what is the word, Peter? It's not like they have to be there. They have to be like, I mean, it used to be where like you were just held in a mental hospital or something, mental health.
Hold, you mean?
Yeah, to like have the time to have the figure out the medicines and see, but we don't even have a place for people to go.
Yeah, they don't.
For that.
they- yeah.
Collins was working at a mental institution. I love that job. But the people were safe, they had 3 meals a day, they had activities, they got their medications, they got their counselors.
Wait, you worked there, you say?
Yeah.
And where was that?
This is in another state.
Oh, in
I
another
was
state, okay.
social
There was a
worker.
big push for deinstitutionalization
Yeah.
in
they
the
just don't-
70s because there
That
were
was with Reagan.
There were
Well,
well, no, it was
Reagan.
before. There were terrible situations in some institutions.
Right.
And so the idea was
Yes.
you'd get people out in the community and you'd have support in the
There's
community.
nowhere to put
And
them.
my father worked on that for the National Institute of Mental Health, but then under Reagan, he cut the monies for the outpatient
Yeah,
support.
It's
Yeah.
never
And so
been the
then there
same.
was.
It's never been the same.
Yeah.
And so then instead of going to any mental,
Facility.
you could just go straight on to prison. And that's the
That's
de
where-
facto
Or on the
attitude.
street.
Yeah, or on the
Either
street.
one or the other, take your
Right.
choice. I mean, those are the choices.
I know.
Really.
And they used to have
But-
like you would have extended kind of like ER stays. You could stay there for like 24 hours or 48 hours. But see, all those they just eliminate. There's no resources to keep people for 2 or 3 days to figure out what's wrong medically with them.
And there aren't mental health services. I mean, everybody says,
No.
oh, mental health. Forget it.
There's no service. Yeah.
And,
Service,
you
no
know,
people.
Especially
so then
bad
it-
in Oregon.
So then it
especially
falls
bad,
to
yeah.
the
We're at the
police
bottom.
to do some really awful,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a pleasant
Yeah.
job.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Count me out. I think you should read any of your poems because Corey came in and he won't even hear one.
Hi, Corey.
Hi.
Yay for Troy driving.
I'm sorry I'm late.
That's
My
okay.
favorite bus driver.
That's
And
okay.
all we've been talking about, he sees it every day, all day.
Okay.
All day.
I'm
You-
every
yes,
day.
you do.
Corey, maybe you're gonna tell him about like when it was super cold and you were picking people up, pulling them off the street into your
Keep
bus.
them warm.
But we'll do that after a poem, maybe.
I just want to make sure everybody understands Corey's only been a bus driver and only recently got past probation. right, right. He
Well,
didn't-
good,
I'm
you're-
official. He had
you're
eaten
still-
years of
still
people's
doing it.
cars.
Yeah.
I didn't scrape anybody's paint off
Yeah.
their car.
Kelly, would you get me some wine?
What are we doing? Which one?
So
Anything?
you pick.
Whatever.
Give her the rosé.
So I'm gonna ask you a bee question. So I noticed all these bees were on their way home and they just
Is that typical in
They die.
every?
They
They,
die.
they die. They
They
have a
die.
short life. They do their
A
job.
bee lives
They-
for like
thank you.
6 weeks.
Yeah, and they
And they die of exhaustion.
and they've done their job, and that's the thing, you know.
I got it.
Thank you.
But they just happen to die right here?
No, we have a beehive right there.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's full of
Wow.
bees, sorry.
I thought
I'm
this
sorry.
was the crematorium or
Yeah,
something.
Well, we have this blue jay, the blue jay comes
Do
and
we
eats
need
the
a-
dead.
Oh, well,
Maybe we
that's,
need a
better
tiny
keep the blue
hiatus.
jay, yeah.
So you literally watch the circle of life.
Yeah.
It really is a circus of life, yeah.
Yeah. God.
That's quite the job.
Cassandra, do you want anything
You
to drink?
two would
You
love
okay?
each other.
You okay?
So the bees are in there?
Yeah, right there. Come around.
You want some
come
more
around.
wine?
You
More wine.
can see, you can
You
see
two
him
would
on
love
this
each other.
side. Here, come,
I already do.
come, sit in my
Over the
chair.
top in the
Where are the
best possible
scorpions?
way.
Mm-hmm.
No
I
scorpions.
said you're over the top in the best possible
Oh,
way.
right. The best possible way. So poem.
So poem, yeah. So I will poem to you.
I love that.
Have you met Luis? Did you
I've been
meet
looking
Luis?
forward to this all day.
Mimi, did you meet
He
Luis?
just got off duty.
I don't know.
He's my nurse. He was my nurse, my male
Yes, yes, yes.
nurse. So he's his partner.
I love your partner.
Oh, thank you.
He is awesome. He's the sweetest.
He's sweet.
Thank you.
Oh.
He's
Yeah.
not. He's a bus driver.
I'm not on there.
Well, okay. Okay. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to read you this one.
All right.
The,
Here, I'm gonna give you something to weigh that all down,
Okay.
and then you can grab your drink and not worry
Okay,
about the
good,
things
good.
floating
Okay.
around. How about
thank
that?
you. Yeah. Yeah. So, this poem is called Streets of Gods. And it's about a good friend of mine who is now in housing.
2 seconds. Wait a minute. I don't mean to interrupt. So Mimi did a lot of work with the homeless for like 8 years. He did mostly. She lives in St. John's area.
Okay.
So that's, and she's done a lot of kind of like, done health things and try to get people living in situations, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And she's kind of like, what do you call it?
That's
Learned
like,
poetry on her own, so to speak.
Okay.
And she used to live here, but now she lives down in southern Oregon, in Fields, Oregon, which is out in the middle of boondocks.
wow. Okay.
So that's my nerd.
I've never even heard of that. Yeah.
It's remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually get to use the word remote.
Yeah. Nice.
It's the fastest growing town.
Don't say it. Don't say it. We'll have to leave. So these were written about people I know and have worked with in St. John's. And this poem, Streets of Gods, was written for a friend of mine who, if there was a cowboy out there, an urban cowboy, this is the guy.
Okay.
And his name's Butchie, or Butch. Streets of God. Butchie felt a wide-brimmed hat, been scorching fire air for weeks. The rope of fragile branches sway inside his faded jeans. He got a new red striped shirt. I see him across the lot. He bends like a water bird, reaching into the trash. One arm pointing to God for balance, the other to the circus. He's looking good, handsome, angular. Good-looking man, loosely bound. The curve of his gray, a ponytail rides his spine. He's so Castro today. A stub of a cigarette smokes curls around his worn bulbs. A bronzed god. His thick nails carry earth like hide. The street tan, he is poetry. Where you been? He drawls. Leans into my car's half-cracked window. Hey, I thought that was you. Here and there, he says. You know. I've been on the farm. Yeah, you look good. Where you been hanging? You know, at the cut. Saw they swept everyone the other day. Yeah, we moved to the other side. It's cool. What do you need? Anything. Yeah. Well, nothing really. I'm good. Smoke comes out of his nostrils, his lips. He's on his horse. Divine.
Wow. Oh my God, that is beautiful.
Butchie's beautiful. Mhm. What a stunning man.
Of all the people here that need this, is he?
Oh, good, 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 good. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Thank you.
So there were many times when I would just walk the streets early, and when the streets were quiet, and the things I would see became poems. So this one is called Number 7. It's like a painting. Number 7, ink on rag, stale, the hungry arc of morning, rooting scruff. Indian woman speaks to cellophane trash stuck to the one-legged wheelchair. She wakes a broken bird inside its bag. Click, clop. Luminaries rush the crosswalks of the go right ahead, of the yes by all means, the grunt of welcome. Phantoms blare the charcoal day. Crows eat fallen scraps. The rot stink from last night's swag.
This all was written for you.
Oh my God. I can see this.
I know.
Like I
he
see
can
this as
see
I'm
the whole
driving my
thing.
bus.
He sees it every day.
I've never seen it in those words though.
So this one, you might have seen her on your bus. Number
I'm sure he
36. Number 36. Her eyes of horsehair, a gulled oyster. She is preemptively pretty, ancillary, but really she is Kali. He, her driver of mirrors who sews into buttons a partial breath, his fingers inhale the beauty of what isn't the day, cups her image in his teeth. She is frost on the blink of a sun in the back seat, the middle of 11 o'clock. Inside her pants, his lips quiver. He mistakes her for the Milky Way or an arrow. Full vision fuckery. She tucks into herself, then nods into the dream.
You have to talk slightly louder
Okay.
because we're all leaning in.
Despite
There you go.
Despite the thorn of winter's buds, sprout the harp strings of spring. Beneath the wisps of the bending branch, tent people murmur, huddle round the candle fire, the sweet honeysuckled vine. It is 4 a.m. Dark tendrils retract, forsythia yawns. Remnants of a leaf tuck into mud. The pink tutu clings to the receding wing of night. Chimes of hellebores arch their backs in the yawn. Bluebird shuffles on the perch, the sheer ghost of morning. I'm looking for ones I didn't read earlier. Number 13, River, Water, and Oil on Cement, are 3 paintings in one. Each painting is a different person on the same streets. Her face exposed, the crustacean shadow, hair of spindling thorns, lips splintered dusk, festering plums. Back straight, a schoolhouse chair. Air dilates, swollen spores burst, fish float past, belly up, the slow drift, the current of chiseled weeds, seeds move like maggots on the stink of a possum's back, the yaw of prints in river mud. folds the sun into creases, his legs starved. Eyes dart, then suspend, hummingbirds. Umbrella fingers cradle threads of sky. Thigh to thigh, legs uncross, knee to knee. His shoes are black. One lace is tied. The tide molts beneath his feet. His breath exhales exhaust into the sullen wheeze. Tilting on the step, the swaggered limb, caught by the concrete of a curried earth. Skin color cholera. I know you, he said. Can you bring me change? Dry leaves turn to dust in the moorings. Tinsel ringlets melt on sidewalk. Fingers bloat in turbid water. Do I know you? He squints into the sun.
You can do a reread too. Pick the one you think you'd like the most.
A reread?
That's most street.
Street.
And most people.
Here you go. Number 29, opaque pastel on crepe paper. Her hustle beneath headphones and a Johnny Deuce. No rain, no wet. The bone shiv of winter waits in the cracked lips of clouds. Meantime, 13 cans is a free lunch. No dog is dogging today. Lombard is the slot
This is
machine.
fucking perfect. This is fucking perfect.
Lombard is a slot machine.
Lombard is the slot
He
machine.
knows the whole
Yeah.
thing. He knows the whole
It is the slot machine.
Yes.
Where do we go? We just walk Lombard with our cans. It is the
her-
slot
Tell
machine.
her about
Yeah.
picking up all the people on the cold, the cold day.
So this that snowstorm we had in December that took everybody by surprise.
Yes.
So we didn't expect it either at TriMet. We did not think that it was going to do what it did. And so
I'm interrupting. Guess what the emergency equipment in the TriMet bus is? One of them is a hammock. Makes no fucking sense.
well, yeah. One of them is a hammock. Yeah.
Why?
So that if we get stuck, we have a place to sleep. We can tie the hammock up in our bus. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, let him
So
tell the whole thing.
Okay.
So a blanket, extra food, pillow, and a hammock, and yeah, that's our
Mind you, it's
emergency.
cold as fucking shit. Keep going.
Yes. So I was still. It was only like what? I'd only been driving for like a week, right?
Kelly.
Literally. And this.
Here's your new job.
Here's your new job, and the snowstorm hits.
They're 10.
And they tell us during training that in this big thick book that we go over in 7 weeks about drop down chains, that you activate the switch, that you have to be going 20 miles an hour, and then they drop down, and then you have chains, but they're only good if there's 3 inches of snow max. After that, they won't give you any traction. So I'm driving along, I'm doing the 33, which goes from Clackamas Town Center to Milwaukee Training Center, and then out to the top of Oregon City up to Clackamas Community
Okay.
College. And the snowstorm hits, and I start going up this hill on my way to Clackamas Town Center, and I flipped my switch to turn on my automatic drop-down chains, but I wasn't going fast enough, so they didn't drop down. So I start going up this hill, and the bus starts sliding sideways and then down towards the curb, and that's where we stopped, and I was stuck with about 30 passengers on board. And
This
so
is your first week?
yeah, I mean, it was, right? I mean, it was around the first week. Yeah,
Oh
that this
my
happened. I
God.
started driving
Like the
Christmas
first
Day.
month even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Welcome
insane.
aboard. That's what he said.
Yeah, and so
So
I
you weren't
ca-
going fast enough so the chains wouldn't drop.
right. Yeah, exactly. You have to be going 25 miles an hour for the chains to drop.
So if you're going along at 25 miles an hour and you're doing okay, the chains will drop. But if you can't make any traction past 25 miles an hour, you're kind of fucked.
You are exactly. Yes. And so
That's, I don't know, there's something wrong with that invention.
Somebody didn't think it over.
But keep
Somebody
going.
didn't
Keep
think that
going.
through,
Keep
right?
going.
so I
I'm
called
sorry, it's not
dispatch.
funny, but
And dispatch takes forever to answer me because everybody and their brother was also
I wrote a
stuck like
poem
me.
called Dispatch, but it
Oh,
was
you did? And so everybody's stuck. And I tell everybody, look, if you go to the top of this hill, another bus is going to come, and they'll pick you up and take you the rest of the way. So everybody got off. They schlepped up the hill. They waited for the next bus. And I see buses passing and going back and forth, you know.
Oh,
And they've
okay.
got their drop-down chains, but they were more experienced drivers. They knew what they were doing. And I also remember during training that they told me about automatic traction control kicking in when you're stuck. And so I think to myself, well, if you've got automatic traction control, I remember my trainer telling me, if you just rock, it'll rock itself back and forth out of a stuck situation. And if you just apply the gas all the way, the system kicks in automatically, and you will eventually get unstuck.
Wow, such tricks.
So I thought, well,
Nobody's on the bus.
I set up my hammock, and I thought, well, and a supervisor came by. They said, well, they might be here tomorrow to pick you up, so just hang tight. And I'm thinking, great. Do I want to be stuck here with, 80% battery left on my iPad? I'm not even going to get through the night with Netflix at this rate. So I think, well, I'm going to try this rocking feature and
for how many
see.
minutes?
Yeah, I mean, so 4 hours later,
You're still rocking.
I'm rocking back and forth, and I finally get unstuck. I
But
get
then
my.
you're the hero. Tell them about all the people you collected.
So I go up to Clackamas Town Center, and I pull into the Clackamas Town Center Transit Center.
Is this 4 a.m. you said?
This is, 4 hours later, so now it's probably 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, I see.
9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I pull into Clackamas Town Center Transit Center, and there's no buses in there like it's normally filled up with